All right, check, radio check. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here today. It's Thursday, August 29th. It's 4:30. So without further ado, let's get started. So the three pillars of retirement income, and we thought this would be a good topic because quite often people sort of while they're working sort of have this impression that it's, how much can they amass? How great a number. We call this the accumulation phase. And for those of you that don't know me, or maybe you're watching from the LinkedIn live stream, I am a retirement income certified planner, which means that not only do I specialize in, financial planning, wealth management, but not only to get to retirement, which is what most people sort of, equate financial planning to, oh, get to retirement, but it's actually to get through retirement, right? Without going broke. So without further ado, we'll get started. There are really three pillars in retirement. And, the first one we're going to talk about is Social Security, right? In my experience, I really feel strongly about this. Retirement is about income. And what are the sources of income that we can get on a guaranteed basis to provide for the things that we need, right? And we got to make sure we get that right, and then anything over that will help us to provide to experience and access the things we want. So Social Security is one of these three areas. And but optimizing your benefits takes strategies. Social Security benefits are based on your average income over your highest 35 years of working, and is designed to replace about 40% of your income in claiming a benefit. Now, I'd like to, instead of me just sitting here reading the slide, the Social Security formula is very complex. Can anybody tell me how the this 35 years is actually calculated? You can go ahead, take a stab. I won't call you out. If you want to type something into chat real quick, just go ahead and type in an answer. I'll give it a few seconds. If I don't see anybody type anything, I'll go ahead and explain it. But this is why, this 35 years. So you do need 10 quarters. All right. So I got one taker. Very good. From tax returns. So sort of you're sort of correct, Harold. What they're, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. What they do, so in order to qualify and be eligible for Social Security, right, we pay into it. That's where FICA, if you've been working, FICA, this part of the Insurance Contributions Act, Federal Insurance Contributions Act, that's deducted from your paychecks every week, every 2 weeks, every month you've been contributing to. You must show 10 years, 40 quarters of contributions, right? And I believe it's over even part-time. I think it's just above $2,200. So what they do, and this is why it's important, what they do, once you hit those 10 years, 10 quarters, that's the starting line to say, hey, you're eligible. Then they calculate it over 35 years. So this is why it's important. When we were young, and I'll use myself, I went into the military. So my income was relatively low, comparatively speaking, at that time in my life. And, I remember even, working while I was in high school at Woolworths, I didn't understand all this stuff, but they would take taxes out. So when you go back and look, a lot of our early years are either very low incomes or zeros. And one of the things I think it's so important that I try and counsel on is working as long as possible, because every year that you work now later on at these higher levels replaces one of those lower years, zeros or even low income years. So it's really critically important. But I digress. What is actually the formula? So it's called average index monthly earnings. So based on the year and the month that you were born, what they're going to do is they're going to go back every year, and they use a reduction factor or multiplier, right? That they're going to turn around and say, hey, you in that year earned X, here's the factor that we use, and then they multiply it to sort of be relative to current environments. They then take those total 35 years for you specifically as a taxpayer, and then they average that. And that is what creates that PIA, that primary insurance amount. So that's actually, I got a little technical there, but I think it's important that I just don't read from the slides. You got to understand that this is complex and that you have to get this right. You can claim Social Security starting at 62, but if you do, you're going to take a haircut, right? So if in my example, if right now I'm the last year of the baby boomer, so my full retirement age, and that's called FRA. The government loves to use letters. So full retirement age is when I'm going to get my maximum PIA, and that's it. And for me, it's age 67. And if I elect to take it, I just turned 60 on Sunday. So if I elect to take this at 62, I know already, the math on that is a 30% haircut. So for every $1,000 that I would have gotten, I only get 700. So that can be a significant reduction, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Just understand that that's how the math works. Now, if your full retirement was 66 and you took it at 62, then the reduction would be 25%. So it's not quite 5% a year, but that's roughly how I look at it. If you wait till claim at 66, 67, depending on your FRA, you'll be able to receive your Social Security benefit. And if you want to claim to age 70, you can claim a greatly increased benefit, guaranteed right now. So this is one of the things, and when I just finished up some classes at Rutgers, and I got some new ones on the calendar coming up in October, end of October, beginning of November. And I ask the audience all the time, does anybody, and go ahead, type in here the answer. Do you think an 8% guaranteed rate of return on your money is a good rate of return? Go ahead, type that in. Anybody? Does anybody think that's a good rate of return? Yeah, I got a couple yeses. Yep. So every year, guaranteed by Congress, right now, this is our environment, that you delay Social Security, you're guaranteed under your taxpayer Social Security number, your taxpayer ID, guaranteed your number is going to roll up 8%. Between 67 and 70, that could be a 32% increase in income. And part of this, and why it's so important to be strategic and work with somebody who knows what they're doing, the other problem that most Americans are going to be facing is that there's something called RMDs, required minimum distributions. So you're going to, it used to be 70 and a half. Then with the Secure Act 1.0, it went to 72. And then they fixed it with Secure Act 2.0. Now it's 73. The year that you turn 73, you must start to take required minimum distributions, RMDs, from any accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, TSPs, and start to take that. So understand that's going to have a significant impact on your Social Security because it creates this environment of all taxable income. It does get complex. Did I mention it gets complex? This is provisional income. This really is, like having an abacus, right? You're sitting here and you're like, oh my God, you have to coordinate your assets, and Social Security is not allowed to help you with that. So part of where I think, when I'm first meeting with people is like, and I look, oh my God, usually 90 to 100% of people's funds are in these qualified accounts. So we'll just call it a 401k for now. It's in your 401k. And they go, okay, I'm going to retire at 67. I'll get my 100% of my full amount. And they say all of a sudden they pull out money at age 67, and they realize, wow, I just got crushed on taxes, taking some money out to meet lifestyle at age 67. Let me go ahead and let that defer. And then what they turn around and do is they kick the can even further down the road. Now it's 73. They've already made the election to take their permanent income, this first pillar of Social Security. And now what they're finding out is that they have no deductions, and they're actually getting crushed on this larger amount as they're taking these required minimum distributions to satisfy tax law. So again, you cannot listen to water cooler advice. This stuff is complex. It really should be decided based on your specific scenarios. And then figuring out when you want to or can claim Social Security is a major part of your income strategies. Working with somebody like ourselves, you may want to claim early if your spouse is still working. So like I said, there is no hard and fast rule for everybody. Everybody's dynamics, taking the spouse into consideration, who's working, who's not, what do we actually need, what's going to optimize the distribution, the income into retirement. Or you may want to claim early, right? You just rolled over your retirement account holdings to a Roth IRA. Well, that requires 5 years of holding. And then you got something called IRMA, because Social Security could be something what they call means testing. So if we're not careful, we could end up leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars back into the government's coffers versus keeping this in our family circle of wealth. So strategizing your retirement accounts and Social Security together is key to optimizing your income. So pillar number 2, pensions and 401ks. And if you've ever heard me speak before, you know that when I run across folks that have pensions, I almost put a unicorn on this slide because they're just rare. They're awesome vehicles, but pensions and 401ks are savings and investment accounts sponsored by employers with incentives and penalties aimed at encouraging you to save for retirement and utilizing your savings as income in retirement. So, what they found out, pensions were once common. I mean, every company had them, but they became so expensive from an actuarial standpoint because of the absolute mandates that were imposed by Congress that they must be, solvent, that they must, have and give a X amount of return. Companies were like, oh my God, we can't afford this. So what we're going to do collectively, because we're such great companies, we're going to put 401ks in place. And you as the employee that has no investment experience, I'm not saying now, but back when they were first created, figure it out. Good luck. Just pick from this list of investments and you'll be good. And it really can be problematic because what I see day in and day out when clients give me their statements is that they're usually taking more risk than they knew they were taking or should be taking. So pensions are structured specifically for income, and the employer carries the investment risk. And this is why the problem is if things weren't performing or the bond environment changed, things changed, that they were on the hook, and they didn't like that. So they shifted that burden back to the employees. After decades, employers have discovered how expensive and mandatory requirements can be offering pensions to their employees. Also, pension elections are complex and irrevocable. So that's why when you get one, if you have one, and you'll see these payout options, well, 75% payout or 50% if I die, my spouse will get. Which one is the correct one? It is confusing. And so if you don't have some guidance on how to make these elections, they're irrevocable. So 401ks are employer sponsor plans. These are what we call defined contribution plans, often with matching benefits. Some 401ks can offer a Roth option. This has been really in the last 10 years. A lot of 401ks, the plan sponsors, the corporations that were doing it, were starting to get sued because either A, they were getting kickbacks, or B, they have a fiduciary responsibility to offer environments that are neutral or holistic, right? So you're seeing more and more companies offering the 401k. We just set up one for a company recently, and that was one of the main things that we emphasize is you have to give employees the option to have these Roth components. And then RMDs, I just talked about it, but when I use the term qualified plans, that's any vehicle where we have deferred the taxes down the road. So, and I sort of already got ahead of myself with Secure Act 1.0 and 2.0. They've changed the rules and they will continue to change the rules. We just hit $35 trillion of US debt. And I always say this, there are no lobbyists in Washington for the 401k, 403b, and IRA arena. So so think about it. The government absolutely needs money now or in the future. The spending is insane. It's non-sustainable. And these areas where we have amassed all this wealth in an effort to retire, there's a tax liability that's attached to it. And if we're not paying attention or being strategic in how to disarm this ticking time bomb, you could find out the hard way that even though you got $1 million in this account, if they change the tax bracket to 50%, 60%, 70%, and you go, well, that's impossible. It's highly likely, right? That, instead of having $1 million to spend, you only got $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 of spendable income or asset. That is called tax risk. And that is one of the things that we absolutely strategize and emphasize against guarding against. Lastly, personal savings, right? So personal savings are the third pillar of retirement income. And they're just as important because what we do with our money and where we put it, one of the things I absolutely have learned in my career, the only person that's going to take care of you in the future is who you are today. You have to get this right. So coordinating the assets, understanding strategies on distribution, and making sure that we're staying compliant and being efficient. Employee-sponsored retirement accounts give you less control over your finances. When I'm helping companies put 401ks in place, we have a very limited menu, right? Every time I look at it, I don't care how big the corporation is. I don't even care if they give you they allow me to do everything at my 401k, Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab. I deal with them all, right? But I'm letting you know that typically we're aware of strategies that you can do individually that typically these boilerplate 401k plans don't offer. And then IRAs allow you to set up your own strategies. That's why, it's not 100% the rule. But quite often, the rule in financial planning is you always want to be gravitating away from the 401k, right? They're more expensive. Typically, you have more risk. They're not typically watching the store. You're left on your own. So when you gravitate into an IRA, and then when it comes time for RMDs, you could have actually a couple different IRAs, and you can aggregate your RMDs from one IRA. Versus if I had 2 or 3 401ks, and quite often when I'm dealing with folks, they have what I call orphan accounts at old employers. And you've left it there because it was just easier. I do not typically like the idea of rolling one IRA or one 401k into my current employer's 401k because we've just extended the problem. Typically, you want to roll that into an IRA, and there's benefits to doing that. But that is not 100% the rule. There are sometimes, if you're over age 55, where maybe you decide to retire early, hang up your cleats, that we may need to access some of that retirement account without having a 10% penalty. That's called the age 55 rule, right? So if you're eligible, sometimes I'll roll some of the money out, but leave some of that behind so that we can meet lifestyle until we get to that magic number, which is 59 and a half. And hopefully that made sense. So these accounts, IRAs, are tax advantage if used properly for your account. If you also have greater control, we just went over that on what you can invest in. And then the Roth. Sometimes we do Roth conversions, right? And if we're doing that, we want to A, start the clock ticking, and B, it's really important and this is confusing for a lot of people. So there are income limits on whether you're single or married, on whether you can do or contribute to a Roth for the year 2024 or 2023 or 2025. However, there are no income limits when you convert to a Roth. So quite often we do tax planning and we do Roth conversions. We're coming up to October, and one of the things that we talk about is what we call Rothtober, right? Where quite often it makes sense where we're looking at clients' accounts, we can run the math on it and say, hey, this makes sense. This would be your tax liability, right, for next year. And so that's part of the equation. But one of the things that you have to be cognizant of is that when you go to apply for Medicare at age 65, that's a whole nother complex wiring system that the government doesn't do anything very simply. You have Social Security, which is complex. You have Medicare, which is complex, and you got to get this right. Did I mention it was complex? So if Medicare, you decide you want to turn around and you say, hey, at 65, but I want to do Roth conversions, right, at 63, 64, when you're going to pay that Medicare Part B premium, which right now is about $175, it's subject to IRMA or means testing. So they're going to go back and look at 2 years tax returns. So this is why if I can get out in front of this early and start to do some of these conversions so that we can get the majority of this stuff done, or at least a strategic amount of a holding into this tax-free environment, it's usually prudent. Now, it's not for everybody. Depends on your income, depends on your assets, but at least looking at it and evaluating, I think, is really prudent and important. And then RMDs for qualified accounts, I've already mentioned that. But there are no RMDs for Roth title accounts. Again, another blessing in disguise, so that now ultimately when I go to say, let's say I delayed my age 70, right, for my Social Security, and I got the 8% increase, and now there is no advantage for waiting past age 70. So let's say that your income at age 67 was, we'll say 3,400, but by delaying, you went to 42 or 4,400 at age 70. But what that allowed you to do is be strategic and spend down your qualified account. Let's just call it an IRA for right now. You spent that down, which was going to be subject to RMDs at age 73 anyway, but now we have a lesser amount, therefore imputed with a lesser amount of required minimum distributions. But the Roth components, because remember, we didn't spend this money, we just took it and stripped the taxes that were due. That's now growing and compounding. And if I can eventually get that account to be, the qualified account or the tax deferred account to be as close to zero as possible, now what I'm doing is not putting as much stress under current tax law. The Social Security won't be as subject to the provisional income rules that are showing, all the income from the qualified distributions. So again, it gets complex. You need to deal with somebody that knows what they're talking about. And again, this is what we do at Professional Planning Services. It's also important to utilize savings accounts, short-term CDs, so you don't have all your savings tied up in illiquid accounts that penalize you for early withdrawal. That's where, we're talking about, like, if you're prior to age 59 and a half, there are things you can and should be doing to kick the taxes down the road. Or, I just met with a client today. We want to be cognizant of liquidity needs. If something comes up, you need to put on a new roof, a new driveway, the boiler breaks, the car breaks down, whatever, right? We don't have all of our money tied up in a place where, God forbid, I need to access it. The government does not have sympathy for emergencies. I say that pretty generally. There's always the ability to appeal if you think you have a case, but generally, you're not going to have that luxury. All right, so that was that. Now let me just take you. So retirement, think about this. Retirement can be for, so if you retire at 65, it could be 10 years. I don't know how long you have on this planet, right? Nobody does. God does, right? My higher power, I choose to call God, right? Could be 20 years. Okay, so you made it to 85. 30 years, made it to 95. But we are having more centurions. Imagine you live to 105, right? Will your money last? What's the world going to look like 20, 30, 40 years from now? Medical advancement, health style, technology, all of these things, it's very hard for us. I sit back and reflect on things like, just as simple as a bicycle that we were riding as kids was considered to me, just technology, right? We were out there and we were outside and we were exploring. And now technology is this, and we tend to stay more indoors a lot, right? So I don't know what the future is going to hold, but whatever that is, let's make sure that we haven't, saved till we're 100 and didn't enjoy life. But on the same token, let's also just say we didn't spend everything between 65 and 70, and now you're going, what happened? So with a little bit of planning, we can help you to figure out if you're on track or if you need some adjustments, or if we can help you to put some things in place. The good news is you don't need to do this alone. Everybody that's on this call, and I think Caitlin might drop a link into LinkedIn, you can hop onto my webpage. We're doing these classes at Rutgers. I'm at no cost to you. If you come to a class, you sit down and listen to how Social Security works, get us some initial data, and we'll look together. Are you on course? Do you have a red line? You've heard me mention that before. Are you in jeopardy of running out of money? That's what most people want to know based on your assumptions. Let's build this together. Let's look together. agree on the numbers, and now we can forecast it, and it's taking all these considerations into consideration, or all your circumstances into consideration. So I would encourage you to do that. Take us up on our offer. And then again, this is, our registration. So every week we do a chat with Chris. We're going to start to change it up a little bit. September is Life Insurance Awareness Month. I cannot tell you what an epiphany I've had after I came into the financial planning industry. Seeing how life insurance works, understanding that it's not your grandparents or your great-grandparents' insurance. Insurance is a tool. It's neither good or bad, but if properly structured, it really does help protect ourselves. And that is one aspect. But it also has some really cool benefits. So I think learning about how actuarial science can benefit you and your family, should life happen, right? That you're as well-rounded and guarded. I think it's worth paying attention to. And you got to get it while you're insurable, right? So I just had somebody apply, and all of a sudden they went to the insurer and they got postponed. Now, it wasn't a hard decline, but it's a postpone. So don't think that, the ads that you hear on TV for, Big Lou, and he's got ex-wives too, and they're just selling term insurance, and that's a tool. It's not bad. It's coverage. You got an umbrella outside. But permanent life insurance, structured properly, can absolutely help you, or should be at least visited. Because I can't tell you how many times I have a client that'll come in and I'm looking at them and they're 68 and 65, and one of them's got health issues, and now they're looking at a pension, and they don't want to elect a pension option. They just don't know what to do, but they're uninsurable. Well, now it's too late. So hear me on this when I'm telling you that, listen, I'm a financial advisor. I'm a fiduciary. And I will tell you this. I will share with you this. I am not going to tell you what you want to hear, but I am going to tell you what you need to know. So, working with a professional is important, and we can help you. So without further ado, September's life insurance, 1 in 6 are reconsidering their retirement party. Kaizen can help you to have more money, more protection, more confidence, if you understand how it works. And it's really, really cool. So here are our next events, and our dates are October 26th at 9 a.m. or November 2nd at 9 a.m. And it's in the South Building. So, I like the Rutgers venue. I like to do it on Saturdays because there's parking. You still get to get a little bit of exercise because you get to walk over there. But we encourage you to come see us, come learn. You cannot learn less, right? So I just had a call with the CPA, and she goes, some of the stuff I knew, but you were really good with some of the history and background. And again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm not trying to be the smartest guy in the room. This is what I do every day. Allow me and my family and my company to help your family. We can do this, right? So these are our disclosures. Bless there for recording. Here's also my disclosures. And so without further ado, folks, thank you for hopping on the call this week. See you all next week. Any questions, reach out.